What's up, everybody? Welcome. This is Whistlekick Martial Arts Radio, episode 810, with my guest today, Professor Dan Anderson. Super Dan. I'm Jeremy Lesniak. I don't have a moniker like Super Dan does, but I'm the guy that hosts, this show, the guy who created Whistlekick, the guy who loves traditional martial arts so much that he invested everything he has into helping you and the rest of the martial arts community via our motto, connect, educate, and entertain. And if that means something to you, I'm glad you're here. And if it doesn't, well, maybe in time it will. Because what are we trying to do? We're trying to get everybody in the world to train for, well, at least 6 months. Because I think that would make the world a much better place. And what are we doing to serve that goal and to meet our mission? Well, go to whistlekick.com. It's where you're going to find all the things that we're doing. Products, projects, training equipment, free stuff, paid stuff. Use the code podcast15 on something that costs some money over there. It's going to save you 15%. We make it pretty simple. whistlekickmartialartsradio.com is the online home for this show and all of the other episodes we've ever done. We're proud of what we do. I'm proud of the team. A number of people touch every single episode every week, and well, 2 a week really. But a bunch of people are involved, and it's great to see the output, and it makes me really happy that we can do this. Oh, how can you support? Almost forgot that part. That's an important part. You could buy something. You could tell friends about us. You could join the Patreon, patreon.com/whistlekick. Starts at literally $2 a month. You want to know who's coming up on the show? $2 a month. You want bonus episodes and stuff like that? That starts at $5 and it goes up from there. But if you want the whole list, if you're a super fan or you love what we do, or maybe you're brand new and you're like, man, this stuff's great, go to whistlekick.com/family. You got to type it. whistlekick.com/family. That's the list of all the things you can do to help us out. And we put bonus stuff in there. That's why we do it. We want to make sure that it takes a step for you to get there. Because if you're willing to put in the time, we're going to give you the reward. You don't want to make it too easy. All right. I had the honor of meeting Professor Dan last October. I'm recording this in 2023, so it's been about 6 months since I met him. What a great guy. Wonderful instructor, wonderful martial artist, great person. And here we are. We have a lengthy conversation. If you've looked ahead, you can see this is a longer episode than normal. And that's because this guy's got stories like you wouldn't believe. His time teaching, training, and in competition connected him to just about everybody. I mean, it's very, very few people. And we tell stories about, well, you know what? I'm not going to name drop because it's more fun when he does it. So hang tight, check out this episode, and I will see you after we're done talking. So how are you?
How's it going? Good. For some reason, we seem to be experiencing the ice age here in Oregon. Yeah, it's been cold and it's been kind of ugly, and we had frost on the deck this morning. It's kind of like, come on, guys, it's April. Come on, spring, do something. So, but on the overall whole, I'm doing fine, doing really good.
Good. Yeah, we don't even take our snow tires off until mid to end of April. I know plenty of people that wait until May or June.
Yeah,
the folks in June are just kind of like,
yeah. Well, that's back east. I mean, that's par for the course. It's not par for the course right. Out here, it's a little bit warmer. Always wet, but it's just been colder than my heart. So what can I say?
It's been such a weird winter.
Yeah.
For you guys, yeah. I mean, all of you out there. I mean, I've seen photos from Tahoe with 16 feet of snow. I don't know that I've ever been in 16 feet of snow. I don't think I can fathom 16. I mean, my house wouldn't be here.
Yeah,
that's for sure.
No, I haven't. But I mean, I spent the first part of the ice age actually in Aruba with my wife. We were on sabbatical for 2 months.
That sounds terrible.
It was just we endured.
You did what you had to do to survive, right?
We took it for the team. What can I say?
I'm sure they appreciate it.
We took it for the team. That's right. Anyway.
Yeah. Well, let's dig in. Let's start. Let's see where it takes us, and I know you got stories, and I know I have to do very little work to get you to tell them, and that's one of my favorite parts about talking to you, is that you make my job super simple.
Yeah, well, we kind of pre-framed that last time. It's kind of like, okay,
We
let's see,
did,
when is he gonna stop with this story? When is he gonna stop with that one? I just keep going, yap, 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 yap. But if it's of
but
interest to people, that's good.
it's you. Hey, they're not here to hear me. It's not about me. They've been listening to me for 800 plus episodes. They're tired of me. They want somebody
Eight
else.
eight
Yeah,
hundred episodes. Wow, that's
yeah. We did 800 last Monday. 8 days ago,
wow.
we did 800. Yeah,
And how long have you been doing this?
8 years.
Wow,
We do two a
100,
week.
100 recordings a year. Wow,
Yeah.
scary. I mean, that's
Yep.
scary productive. That's very, very well done.
Well,
Very well done.
fortunately, I've got great people on the team. Of course, Andrew, but there's
Oh yeah,
more than just us. I mean, there's quite a few people that get involved in the episodes, and I'm really lucky that we have them. Because otherwise, yeah, I would have.
yeah,
I think I would have had to tap out long ago because it's a lot of work.
yeah.
It's a lot
I
of
like
work.
that. Tap out.
Right.
Okay,
Right.
yeah. So let's get going. So
Well,
what do you want to know?
so here's where we're going to start. We're going to start at the beginning. When did you start training, and why?
Okay, so back in we have to really go before I started training. I
Okay.
I was a failed baseball player. I loved baseball. I adored baseball. Uh, Los Angeles Dodgers were my favorite team. I played little league. Little league team I played on was the Dodgers, and
Mm,
but the thing is, I didn't know that I wasn't any good.
mm.
I was a utility player. Now I didn't find out that a utility player was someone you would stick in the position where they'd do the least damage, and, and
That's why
so
they always put
I,
me in right field.
I saw right field a lot, and I remember I kept pestering the coach. I want to pitch. I want to pitch. I want to pitch. Let me pitch. And but he never let me pitch. Um, I would bat decently in the practices, yeah, in battle, right, in practice. But I just choke at the plate. I mean,
Mm.
really choke. I knew that fastball was going to come and hit me in the ribs or hit me in the head. It never did, but I knew it was going to. And so I'd be standing there with the bat like that. So anyway, uh, he let me pitch the last game because our best pitcher and hitter, Gordon Gadbois, I still remember his name. He was on vacation, and we
Mm.
were, I mean, where we were in the standings, letting me pitch wasn't going to make any difference. Well, we beat the guys 15-5, and I had a type of a sidearm curveball that was just messing people up left, right, and center.
Mm.
But that was the last game of Little League. Now, I knew that moving up to Babe Ruth, which was the next league up, I was a little guy, and these guys were like monsters, and they threw rocket-like pitches, and it was just, oh my God, it was just amazing. And I knew I wouldn't make it in baseball, so I dropped out. Anyway, years further down the line, I was in Civil Air Patrol, and that's an auxiliary of the U.S. Air Force. And so there was this
High
captain.
schoolers, junior high and high schoolers.
Oh no,
So
I'm
younger.
yeah, junior high, high school, and even some adults.
Oh, okay.
And yeah, and I was it's 1966, so I think that was the ninth grade if I remember right. And anyway, one of a captain there, he did karate.
Mm.
And the only thing that we knew about karate was James Coburn, our man Flink, and he chopped the guy with a judo chop on the shoulder, and our guy go out. And then shortly before I started training, the Green Hornet came out. So the Kato, and so here's a guy who moved quick, did all these crazy little yells and so forth. It looked a lot better than James Coburn. So anyway, my mother, I pestered my mom and about doing lessons. Now I'll slide into the why before the first lesson. Now the why on this was that um, I had a privileged position in junior high that ended. I was Anderson's little brother. Now
Mm.
Anderson, when we're talking about Don, my brother, well, he was the biggest hood in the school. He was the best fighter. So being Anderson's little brother was a very protected status. You didn't mess with Anderson. So Anderson's little brother could get away with being a Weisenheimer and that sort of thing. dot, dot, until Anderson got sent to reform school. Once he got sent up, and anybody here who's young who doesn't know what reform school is, it's basically prison for underage kids. Mm-hmm. So once Anderson got sent up to reform school, this special status got yanked. All of a sudden, nobody cared if I was Anderson's little brother because Anderson wasn't around to pound you if you pounded on me. So, I remember talking to Dave. Dave was the captain of the Civil Air Patrol. He said, winter karate class, and I bugged my mom to be able to go let me try out. So I go and I try out. Well, either Dave told me his class, or I misduplicated the time, and I came at the wrong time. I came during Dave's class. It was like the advanced class. And now the instructor at the time, who's very well known in real deal martial arts and so forth, Lauren Christensen, he was the chief instructor. He was a green belt at the time. And it wasn't even a dojo, it was at the Martial Recreation Center, down in the weight room. They move all the weights off to the side. We're on this concrete floor. I learned to bounce very quickly. But I go in there and, Lauren tells me that, this guy's class, the beginning class is an hour earlier. And then he did something which was just, I still look at it and I marvel to this day. He pulled one of his blue belts off to the side. His name was Tony Leonetti. He showed up late for the beginning class. Would you show him how to do climbing form, which was the long forward stand, Zinkutsudachi. Show him climbing form, show him front punch, show him front kick, show him down block, high block. And so that was my first lesson. Tony was actually my first instructor, but it was at the behest of Lauren. And it was diving off the high board. And it was, I was amazed. And then I watched these guys spar, right? Now, this is 1966, and there's a bunch of blue belts. So the sparring was, when I look back at it now, it was pretty primitive and so forth. But I'm looking at it as, wow, these guys are practice fighting. They're not killing each other. This is amazing.
And I get the sense from the way you talked about your brother, you were not much of a fighter. That he did all that work for you.
I was a mouthy little cat. I was a mouthy little coward. I was a wise guy, and Donnie was the fighter. Dale was the brains, Donnie was the fighter, and I was the failed baseball player. If we're going to categorize anybody like that, that's exactly how I'd categorize this. Okay. So anyway, so we did I did the class, and oh man, I started bugging my mom, we got to let me take this karate business and so forth. And she thought it was going to be a 6-month fad, and 56 years later, it turns out to be a 55-year and 6-month fad. So it's worked out really well for me.
What was it other than watching these folks spar and that hooked you?
I can't really quantify that or specify as to what really hooked me. It's one of those where, and you'll talk to anybody who's in a particular endeavor, and if it's something they specialize in, something they fell in love with, it spoke to them. It just spoke to them. It spoke to me. And and let me backtrack just a hair. Why I wanted to do it? Well, obviously self-defense, and the other one was I wanted to be cool. And cool is the jury's still out on that one, but it spoke to me. It was the doggonest thing. It was like I felt like I was natural. It came without effort. It was something I could do, and of course, the Oriental mysticism that's all behind that. This is a non-American culture thing, and my own opinions about our culture is that we'll gravitate to almost any other culture because we have none. I mean, when you look at McDonald's and MTV, that's Western culture. Sorry, but it just bit me. It just grabbed on, and there you go. So that's the best I can say on it. It just bit, and it bit hard.
And so what did those early days look like? Because, we're talking about the 60s, and, it'd
We're
be
talking about
pretty.
when dinosaurs ruled the earth. Yes.
So the world was in black and white, and, everything was uphill. There was no downhill anywhere.
That's right. That's
But
right.
you're
Yeah.
mentioning an instructor who wasn't even a black belt, right? You said he was a green belt.
Yeah. Lauren was a green belt.
That
Lauren,
wouldn't happen today, and I just want people to recognize that's how new and uncommon martial arts was back then. That it was
yeah.
coveted, but yet there weren't this there wasn't this long line of black belts that could open a school on every corner.
No, no, not at all. Not at all. And it's funny because there was actually two instructors. There was Lauren, and then there was Mike. And and they would take either day. So Lauren would have, I think, maybe Tuesday, and Mike would have Thursday or something like that. It's either Tuesday, Thursday, or Monday, Wednesday. But the thing was is that back in the 60s, dojos were few and far between. I remember in Portland, Oregon, which was the city right across the river from Vancouver, Washington, which is where I was going. There were two dojos. There was the Tracy's Kempo, and then there was the Oregon Karate Association. Now, in a city of 100,000, two dojos. That's it. So that's how rare karate was. Now,
And just
in
for
Vancouver,
grins, how many schools would you estimate? I know Portland's grown,
oh,
but how many
oh, oh,
schools would you
oh,
estimate are in Portland now?
I don't know about Portland. I'm in a suburb
Mm-hmm.
in Gresham. And Gresham, Gresham's now like 100,000. In Gresham, we've got a 6 or 7 schools. So we've probably easily got about 20 schools in Portland. I mean, martial arts these days is as frequent as soccer.
Mm-hmm.
It's a lot of the Oriental culture has gone out of it, and it is now part and parcel of baseball, football, tennis, badminton, full contact, underwater basket weaving, and soccer. We're not very we're not very rare. And back in '66, it was like Vancouver, size of 24,000 people at that time, had no dojos. It was the Marshall Recreation Center. That was it. So to have two green belts there wasn't, it isn't like what it would be like now. And now, mind you, I got to start. It was birthday present, 14th birthday. And back then, the running joke I like to say is that, there were no Mighty Mites, there were no Little Dragons, there were no Tater Tots, there was no kids program. I was this skinny little 5'5" kid of 105 pounds, and I was in the karate class. I wasn't in the juniors class. I wasn't in the kids class. I was in
the karate class.
The class, and so I'm working with the adults. So I've got to work with guys like Paul Diamond. And it's funny how I remember a lot of these names. Paul Diamond, who's the weightlifter. Fred Wilcox, who I still claim has the boniest shins in karate ever. It hurt to block him.
So people I train with might say, put me up for nomination on that.
Yeah, well, I'd put you up against Fred Wilcox any day if Fred's still alive. Okay. Fred was old back then. I mean, he might have been 30. So anyway, the training was pretty classical. You'd be sitting in horse stance and punching and yelling, ooh, 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 and then doing the high blocks, the inside blocks, and so forth. And you'd be doing the 1 steps up and down the floor. And then you'd be doing like the 1 steps with the partner. So they step in, they go bang, boom. Then we'd be doing kata practice. And then at the end, we'd be doing free sparring. Now, the fascinating thing about Lauren is he did everything that we did. So he didn't talk and count. He talked and he would count and perform with us. Mm-hmm. And he'd work twice as hard as the rest of us. And so he was like Mr. Joe dripping with sweat when he was done. I mean, we were all sweaty and tired, but man, he pushed his body hard and he pushed our basics hard. But it was very, very old style. And, we'll get into this in the magazines later on, but there were a lot of techniques that were just very, very basic. A lot of the advanced techniques I actually ripped off from magazines and would do in class, spinning back kick. I learned that from Black Belt magazine. Chuck Norris, he'd do fake backhand chop. The guy would go for the high guard and he'd spin around and whoop, hit the guy with
Was
a
that
back
because
kick.
your school didn't have a spinning back kick, or you were learning it maybe sooner than they wanted to teach it to you?
I would bet dollars to donuts that we didn't have a spinning back kick. I mean, it was the style that I trained in. It was called Kong Su Do, Kongsudo, which are the Korean pronunciation of Karate Do, empty hand way. Kong Su Do, same. Now, to me, it was a Korean version of Shotokan Karate. How did I know this? Well, I picked up Tsutomu Oshima's book, his translation of Karate Do Kyohan by Gichin Funakoshi. And I'm looking at the katas. It's like, dang, that
Hey, we do that one.
hand one, that's Pyongan one. Hand two, that's Pyongan two. Basai, that's Basai. Jite, that's Sipsu. And, all with the long stance and with the et cetera, et cetera. It's like, oh. So I originally started out in a Korean version of Shotokan Karate. So if you look at 1966 Shotokan Karate, they didn't have spinning anything unless you're hit with a leg sweep. So you get to the tournament champions that are doing all this crazy stuff, such as skip in and side kick.
Revolutionary,
like, hey,
right?
This is good stuff. I gotta jump on this. So, yeah.
Okay. I know competition has been a big part of your time in the martial arts, and
yeah, that's where I made my name.
When were you first aware of competition? Was it from magazines or?
It's from Black Belt magazine. Now, Black Belt at that point in time was the only magazine, and it was a bi-monthly. So, every other month, I'd walk downtown, probably about a mile and a half, something like that, and pester this one magazine bookshop owner. Has the new Black Belt magazine come in, and I'd go down there and I'd just lap it up. And one of the things that they had in there was technique of the month. So they'd have guys like Joe Louis and Skipper Mullins and Chuck Norris and Alan Steen and all these old pioneers demonstrating is either technique of the month or my favorite technique or whatever. But the cool thing was they covered tournaments. And so the thought of competition really got me going, got me fast. And then when I finally was able to enter competition, I did poorly. But the first one was when they didn't even allow kids to fight. All you could do is kata. So I went up, I competed in kata. And if you're familiar with either Teki Shodan or Naihanshi Shodan, the horse stance one where you go back and forth, I whizzed through that probably in half a second. I mean, there's no sense of timing, no sense of pacing, no sense of drama. It's just
how old were you at that point?
And 15.
Okay.
15.
So you've been training a year or so.
Yeah, about a year. And on that one, I think my mom allowed me to take the bus up to Tacoma. And so this is like 15-year-old Greyhound bus, go up, compete, come back. And but I ripped through it, and I don't know what place I got. I know it was below third place, and they didn't tell me. Then later on in the year, I compete at the Seattle Open. Now, the Seattle Open was the big monster tournament. And that at this point, then they let us, the junior divisions fight. Now, anything under 16 was junior. And so I was 15 years old. And at that point in time, now it's really funny because, there's been a big thing on, continuous fighting. Well, that's what we did. The juniors did continuous. We didn't do points. And so I'm out there and I'm in this match. And it's the only one my mother ever came to. And so I'm out there and this is before safety pads and all this good. So I take this shot right in the sternum. and I start going down, right? Then they call time to let me get my air. Well, out of the corner of my eye, here comes Mom coming down the stands, and I'm kind of going, no, Mom, no, because I I can't have her coming to the ring and my poor Danny or anything like that. So I finally was up and ready to go before she got down there. But that was the last tournament she ever came to. And after that, it was like, you go with friends, you go by yourself. But she wasn't going to see her kid get dropped. And then now my dad was a funnier one, because this one, if you're ever around me in a social sense and you see that I've got this oddball, wicked sense of humor, this is from my father. So years later, 71, I'm fighting for the grand championship at a tournament in Vancouver, Washington. And no, excuse me, it's in Portland. It's the Portland Community College Championships. And he told me he was going to show up. Well, all day I don't see him. It's like, where's Dad? Where's Dad? Where's Dad? I want to do well for Dad. Where's Dad? So I don't see him. And so I'm fighting in the championship. And then at that point in time, when you were tied and time ran out, you turn around, you go back to your respective lineup places, and you'd sit in an oriental kneeling position for 30 seconds, right? So we're tied. They have us turn around, sit down, and out of the corner of the gymnasium, I hear, "Hit him now!" It's like, Dad's waving at me.
Found him. He's here.
Yeah, he turned around, sat down, "Hit him now!" So those are the only two times that my parents ever watched me fight. But a turning point, and this was in '68. The white belt division back in the day was white belt through green belt. So, those poor orange belts and purple belts and blue belts and white belts, they had to fight as green belts. Well, I took third place at that tournament. And then shortly thereafter, I made my brown belt, and I took third at the Seattle Open and first at the Western States, two of the two biggest tournaments in Pacific Northwest. Mm-hmm. And things started. And so, I continued on.
Let me ask a question before you keep going. Was that by design? Was this something you were putting a lot of time into practicing, or was it strictly natural talent?
It's funny. Everybody and their mother will tell me that I was a natural. Lauren Christensen, he mentioned that I was a natural learner. I don't know. I know I practiced a hell of a lot. I practiced very hard. But if anything was going to make a determining factor, is I was very passionate about it. This was the thing that was my niche. This was my thing. This is the thing. I mean, I felt like a natural, but was I honestly a natural? Hard to say. I mean, it's really hard to honestly say. So the best thing to do is just let others make that determination for me. I know that, and passion is like, that's, if we talk about my success, I can talk more about passion, but I was very passionate about it. And then the second thing is that I was willing to overcome the upsets of life, so to speak. There were many people who had lost in tournaments and so forth, and they let that be the determining factor as to whether they're any good or not. Me, I'd lose, and I'd get cranky about it, and I'd go harder. But it was a real passion thing. So, like I said, I'll let other people determine that. I know that it was not uncommon for me to bring a notepad to class, and I would take notes, and I would draw, I would cartoon the techniques. And I even did this up through when I was training with Remy Presses in modern arnis.
Was anybody else in your school doing that?
Oh no, no,
It's
no.
a very rare
They're
person I see take notes in a martial arts context.
yeah, yeah. And this was like, like I said, I was passionate.
Mm.
I was burning at it, and so this is what I was going to do. So there you go.
Mm.
Yeah.
Okay.
So anyway,
When? Oh
yeah.
yeah,
Oh,
please
go
keep
ahead.
going.
Oh,
No,
well, I was just going to say. I was
you don't
just going
need
to
my
say
segue
after.
if you're taking it yourself. I'll
Well,
just hang. I'll hang up.
we were talking about tournaments. So I did well as a
Yeah.
brown belt, and I can tell you about my black belt test later because it doesn't have to do anything with tournaments. But by the time I made black belt, my thought process was I can beat these guys.
Mm.
Now, the first couple of
Who were the
tournaments.
guys? Because there were some names that people might recognize, right? When you talk
No,
about the
not in the
guys.
Pacific Northwest. Not in the Pacific
Okay,
Northwest.
we're still there. Okay,
No,
you
no, no,
haven't.
no, no. We're still in the Northwest. No.
Okay.
But my thought was, I could beat these guys. Now, that didn't quite turn out as planned because
Mm.
in the first two tournaments, I got beat my very first match,
Mm.
and I've seen this happen to others where they get upset, they get cranky, they get this or that, they get discouraged, and it was like no, 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 I got to go harder, go harder, go harder. And then it was finally in Bremerton, Washington, a little seaport that's across from Tacoma, in
Mm.
1970 at Bob Hill's tournament where I actually won the grand championship, and it was like yes, but but if we get into talking about some of the guys, okay, now I got to roll back to 1969, and I was a brown belt at the time. A very well-known martial artist across the country, Mr. Steve Armstrong, who has since passed. He ran the Seattle Open, but more importantly, he ran the International Karate Championships. He was the guy that was on the floor at Ed Parker's tournament, and
Mm.
so he was the guys getting rings going, making sure things ran on time, et cetera. Well, anyway, so he went down to the internationals every year, and he had taken a shine to me because I was this scrawny little kid coming out of Portland, Oregon. But I would come up to his tournaments and I'd ask everybody questions. And so one year he asked if I'd like to come along, and he usually had like a little caravan, a bunch of his students that go down. And so I went down to the internationals at the age of 16. And again, my mom is like, "Yeah, you can go." Okay, cool. So I go down, and this is the first time where I get to see some of the champions.
Mm.
I see Chuck Norris. Chuck Norris competes in kata. Mike Stone. Mike Stone competes in kata.
Mm.
I get to see fighters like Joe Louis and John Natividad and Benny Urquidez and Steve Saunders, who's now Steve Muhammad. And it was in, oh, and, and I get to claim right now that I'm the only person alive who has met Bruce Lee and taught him nothing. Thank you very much. Thank you. So, and I can tell you my Bruce Lee story in a moment, but I had several things happen as a young brown belt that was just incredible. Okay, so picking it up from the 1969 internationals, yeah, that was an amazing experience for me because I learned some very, very good senior junior habits actually as a brown belt, and one of the most important ones was that now see back in 1969. Okay, uh, those of you guys who are my age, I just turned 70 in November. Remember this very well. The rest of you guys, uh, Google it up, go to YouTube, and look at the political climate at that time in 1969, summer of 1969. So what you had is you had this huge black-white thing going. You had civil rights. You had the Black Panthers. You had Eldridge Cleaver. Uh, you had a lot of this stuff going on, and uh, no offense to us white boys, but you had white-oriented press, so all this was like even fueled more, right? So, and I lived, the town that I lived in was 24,000 people, and it was mostly a white-oriented town. I only knew
Mm.
5 black kids. Two were the Mosley brothers. They were twins. One guy was Clarence Harris, who was the school jock. Another guy, Jimmy Johnson, who uh, got himself as a young James Brown. And then this other kid that I can't remember was Urkel before there ever was Urkel. So these are the only guys that I knew, right?
Yeah.
But at the same time, you hear about this Black Panther movement and this and that. The next thing, well, I'm driving, I'm writing. I'm not driving. I'm writing down, and I'm hearing all this stuff about the Black Karate Federation and how there's been riots at the tournaments and that sort of thing. You got to watch out. You got to watch out for this business. And now, Steve Sanders, who's, like I said, now Steve Muhammad, he was chief instructor. He was the main guy. Well, he had also been in the magazines. Steve Sanders fought here, he fought there, and like that. And I was very big on heroes at the time. So I'm at the internationals, and over probably about 100 feet from me is Steve Sanders, probably about 20, 30 of his guys. And, like every other martial arts school, the school hangs together. Chuck Norris's guys were over here, and the Tracy Kempo guys were over here, and here's Steve Sanders with BKF. And I'm looking over there, and I'm kind of going, God, I want to meet this guy, but I don't want to get my butt beat just because I'm a white boy. Now, see, mind you, this is the promo that I bought into. Right. So I decided, to gird my loins and go over. And I walked over and said, excuse me, Mr. Steve Sanders, yes? He goes, yes. And I said something about, I just wanted to meet you. I read about you in the magazines. And I don't even remember what he said to me, but I know it was soft spoken. It was like, thank you. And I just nodded my head and thank you. And I turned away, and it was like, I didn't get killed. I didn't get jumped. I didn't get my ass whipped. Something's wrong with this picture of the promo that I was given. And as I told him and Cliff Stewart later on, says, I got my first brilliant race relations lesson right there. And and the funny thing was, just to go further on this, after I made black belt, I started hanging with the guys. There's the second gen guys. And so, I'm hanging out with Sammy Pace and Ernest Russell and Hot Dog Harvey and Nathan Cruz and Krager Smith and a number of these guys. And, I'm almost second family with the AF guys, right? And I run into Cliff Stewart, in the early 2000s or something like that. And we're at George Kirby's Budoshin camp. And George Kirby's a well-known jiu-jitsu practitioner. But he'd have a bunch of people in at his Budoshin camp, and they'd be teaching different things. So I was teaching harness. Cliff was teaching his WAR, I believe it's called Weapons at Reach or Weapons at Range, something like that. And I'm thinking, okay, he's one of the BKF seniors. He's not going to remember who I am. So from across the gym, I hear, Super Dan. I look up, and it's Cliff. And I'm thinking, oh, God, he does remember me. So we get together, we talk, and I told him the story about, meeting Pops in 1969. And I said, where does he live? Because I'm in LA at the time. I said, well, he's in Atlanta, Georgia. So, okay, fine. I said, I never got to tell him that. Well, anyway, that was in the morning. Later on in the afternoon, I hear again, Super Dan, except his arm is extended. He's got a cell phone in his hands. He goes, guess who I have on the line? Oh, really? So I get on there, and I talk to Steve, and I told him about this lesson that I learned from him. And honest to Pete, he goes, well, Dan, you don't know this, but you're the guy that we used to watch to learn how to fight the top fighters. I'm kind of going, you've got to be kidding. You, the guy who Bruce Lee said had the fastest hands in karate, you had won the International Karate Championships lightweight title, I don't know how many times. You are watching me to see how to fight them.
It's quite the compliment.
it's beyond that.
Yeah.
It was amazing.
Yeah.
And anyway, so he's been a very special place in my heart. Um, and I met a number of people there, and the cream of the crop in terms of learning how to treat others actually came from Bruce Lee.
Hmm.
And it's funny because I mean, like I said, my running joke is that I'm the only person who's ever met Bruce Lee who taught him nothing, because of course after he died, people talking about I worked with Bruce. He learned this, he learned that, he learned the next thing from me.
And or the other way, he taught me what he really wanted this to be, and yeah, there's a lot of that
Exactly
out there.
right. And so my thing on Bruce Lee was that in the International Karate Championships was like 2,500 competitors. It was 2 days long. And after the second day, there would be an intermission where they would clean the arena and then set it up for people to come in for the finals. So I'm sitting off to the side, and there's this limo that pulls up, black limo, and and I can recognize, this is like maybe half the length of a football field, maybe 50 yards, maybe longer, but I recognize him. It's like Bruce Lee was everybody's hero at the time, and he gets out, and he and Linda get out, and I'm kind of like, ugh. Next thing I know is I am up walking to an intercept. I am going to intercept. So it's like, man, I'm
Was this
just
conscious, or did your feet take over?
my feet said, "Get off your ass, boy. We're heading for Bruce Lee." And so, and I don't know what I'm going to say. I really don't. It's like, oh man, what do I say? I don't know what I say. What did I? So I get up in front of him, and I actually walked dead in front of him. I cut off his path, and I said, "Excuse me, you're Mr. Bruce Lee, aren't you?" He goes, "Yes." And I'm thinking furiously. Well, I used to collect business cards, martial arts business cards. And so I asked him, I collect business cards. Do you have one on you that I can have? Now, when I tell this story in a seminar, I'll always pick somebody and I'll always ask, okay, so who came here in street clothes? Not in your karate, but who came here in street clothes? Somebody will raise their hand. Says, okay, good. So what shirt did you wear? Oh, I had this blue button-down shirt. Good. What kind of pants? Levi's. Good. Did you wear a belt? Yeah. What kind of belt? Well, it was this brown thing. Good. What kind of socks did you wear? Well, I got these blue and white striped socks that I got from my wife for April Fool's Day. It's good. What kind of shoes do you got? Well, I got a pair of Reeboks, and it's good. What color are they? They're red. Do they have stripes on them? To describe them, and they'll go in this description of what they wore, right? Well, and I do this to emphasize a certain point, which is, so I asked Bruce Lee. Now, I'm regretting the question, because Bruce Lee, he liked to show how buff he was. So he's got his little black Nehru jacket, and it's nice and tight. He's got these white pants that they're skin tight. You can count every single hair on his butt, and he's got his beetle boots on. And so he didn't have a business card. I saw he didn't have he didn't have a wallet.
Hmm.
It would have been seen either in his breast pocket or his back pocket or whatever. So what does Bruce Lee do? I asked him for a business card. Honest to Pete. Pats his chest, pats his pocket, says, "I'm sorry I don't have one. Maybe next time."
Hmm.
He takes 3 seconds to put on this show of looking for a business card he knew damn well he didn't have, just because a kid asked him. And so I said, "Thank you very much, sir." And I left. And of course, I was on cloud 9. Now, he
Yeah.
could have very, very easily done a W.C. Fields. And you youngsters, go Google him up, go YouTube him. And, he could have done a "go away, kid, you bother me" type of thing, which I got from Joe Louis later on. So that was my only down thing in the 1969 International. But, that lesson was utterly brilliant, because later on in my tournament career, I would have kids come up and ask me for an autograph on the not the flyer, but the booklet that they'd have a pamphlet, the pamphlet at the tournament, and I would never refuse. In fact, I even had one where they are calling my name. Dan Anderson, riding lightweight for first place from Portland, Oregon. And kid comes up and I go, look, they're calling my name. I gotta go fight. You stay here. Don't move. I'll be back. Don't go. You're not gonna go. Don't go anywhere. I go up, win, lose, or draw. I can't remember what happened in the match, but what I do remember is I come back down. The kid's still standing there. I said, thank you. You didn't move. Let me. And there's a good buddy of mine, Mike Geneva, who was also a top tenor when I was a top tenor, and he and I quite often would have kids lined up, and we'd always sign, never turn anybody away. And even to this day, if and it's not so much on autographs, but advice, or they want to say something, I always give them time. Always give them time, because you never know how just a few seconds might impact somebody. And the big thing is if you can impact somebody positively. Let me tell you this other story here. Sure. 1973 U.S. Championships. Okay, I had taken second place at these 1972 internationals, but I still wasn't really widely known. And I'd never bitten Bill Wallace. Wow, the best kicker in all karate. The guy who's like number one in the United States. Wow, this is amazing. So, there's Bill Wallace, and so I kind of get my guts up and excuse me, hi, Mr. Wallace. You don't know me, I'm Dan Anderson, Portland, Oregon. May I ask you a question? I said, sure. Says, could you give me any pointers on my hook kick? So what does Bill Wallace do? He takes me outside the competition to a hallway. We end up stretching and training together for 20 minutes. This is the time the number one guy in the country, I mean, he could have cocked his eyebrow. And again, yes, sorry, I kid. I don't have the time, or I'm talking with these guys, or he takes me out and he works with me. So
he's always been a class act.
Bill's great. Yeah. Bill's great. I mean, but there's a lot of guys that were really great. Jeff Smith was great. Howard Jackson was great. Chuck Norris. Okay. I have two Chuck Norris stories. One's a really good one, and the other one shows what a knucklehead I was. But
well, that could also be a really good story.
Well, it is a good story. It's just one of those that I mean, I can still tell. But Chuck. Okay. 1973 here in Gresham, Oregon. I'm a poor karate boy. I'm a poor karate competitor. He's got a seminar, and I don't know how much it is. It's, I don't know, a princely sum, $25 or something. And one of his students, Bob Barrow, is teaching English at Gresham High School, right? So I come out, but I'm sitting up in the stands. Now, we had met several times in the at the internationals and so forth. And being a competitor, I'm pretty sure he knew who I was, only because we competitors tend to scope out other competitors. And he looks up in the stands, and I'm watching. He goes, Danny, what are you doing up there? I said, sorry, sir, I couldn't afford the seminar. He says, did you bring a gi? Yes, sir. Come on down. Come and train. Didn't charge me for the seminar. Pulled me out of the stands to get with the rank and file and do what he was doing, right? And it's like, again, Chuck Norris was like, this is before movie, film, Walker, Texas Ranger, Delta, right, blah, 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 Chuck. But he was still very, very extremely well known as being like the number one guy for 3 years in the U.S. Danny, come down, train. Come down and train. This is Chuck. I felt comfortable enough around him to prank him later. This is really bad. But people, anybody who knows me out there will go, yeah, that was Dan. Where the 1980 Battle of Atlanta, and Chuck is sitting at the the VIP, combo VIP announcer's table, and I walk up behind him. I pinch my nose and I say in a very high voice, excuse me, Mr. Norris, could you sign my cup? And he hesitatingly turns around to look at me like, oh my goodness, what have I got myself in? And he looks at me and I have this great big grin on my face. And he looks at me and just starts laughing. Oh, Danny. I said, hi, Mr. Norris. How you doing? But that was, so those are my two Chuck Norris stories. But
those are great.
But the thing I like to tell about people about Chuck Norris when I'm meeting him is that the guy that you see, on Carson or on Letterman or Leno, that's the guy you see in real life. The guy who's just friendly, affable, not full of BS, etc. Yeah, that was Chuck. And that was Chuck before his movie days, and then you see him after his movie days. And I think he just did his 83rd birthday or some crazy thing.
Yeah.
Yeah, more power to him. I mean, just a
He
wonderful.
Great.
Yeah, doing great, and it's just a wonderful role model. So, so I learned a lot from these guys, and although I didn't, let's say, enact it until later on, they were terrific role models. And so this is kind of the thing that I try and emulate out to the younger colored belts, the younger black belts, and so forth. I'll do this more so in seminars. I don't go to tournaments anymore, but I remember Jackie Bradbury. She and her husband run Kindred Protective Arts in Kansas City, Missouri. And she said something that really made me feel good. Was that I said, so what is it that I should promote about myself, because I'm not a great self-promoter. And she said, well, you're the most accessible grandmaster that I've ever met. One of my students, Barry McConnell, I remember we were coming back from somewhere doing like a seminar or something, and it's like 11:30 at night. I'm just hungry, and they're big dog. I said, Barry, do you mind if we stop for a burger somewhere? He goes, and you're the most low-key grandmaster that I've ever met. Yes, we can stop and get something to eat. So, and I tell you, that sort of thing, it's like one of those, questions that you get. How would you like to be remembered? Well, low-key grandmaster, accessible, aside from being a technical geek that will figure out any and everything so that you can do it easily. That's how I'd like to be remembered. And I learned it from guys like Jeff Smith. He's one of these guys that if anybody's earned to have a chip on his shoulder, is Jeff.
Sure.
Doesn't have a chip on his shoulder. Bill, he's earned enough to have two chips, one on each shoulder.
Yes.
No chips on his shoulder. I mean, these guys are very accessible. And
there's a joke in there somewhere about he put both of them on one shoulder.
Yeah, so he can kick with his left leg, so he can counterbalance.
I can't quite find the joke, but there's one in there.
Yeah. So anyway, this all stems from the question, of the old guys. What did I learn from the old guys? That's what I learned from the old guys. So.
Eventually, competition lost its luster for you. You stepped back and you started thinking about other things with regard to martial arts. What was the pivot? Where did you go next?
Well, where I went next was in Filipino martial arts, modern arnis, and I had the great fortune not of meeting Remy Presses, but of Remy Presses putting up with my being a knothead.
It's a little bit of a theme going
and then me finally seeing the light. You see, I mean, there were several knot-headed moments in my martial arts career. Now, in meeting Remy Presses, okay, we'll back up to it was 1980, and I was in the top 10 world-class athlete, but I was starting to get disinterested in competition. I had achieved all my goals. The one goal that I never set was to be and remain number one in the country. Whoops. Perhaps I should have set that goal. But that and $5 will get you a cup of coffee. But anyway, so we're down in Oakland, California, and I'm rooming with a very good friend of mine. His name is Fred King. He was a Kajikimbo stylist. And Freddie, he had a school in Portland, and we'd go over every Thursday night. We'd train. It's just a heavy sparring night. We'd beat each other up. But he was into putting on seminars by all these guys that I was not interested in. Danny, I've got this Tai Chi guy coming in. This is really good. Says, yeah. Tai Chi guys can't fight. Danny, I got this weapons guy coming. Yeah, put the weapons down. I'll beat on him. Danny, this guy's got a Qigong. It's like, yeah. My thoughts on Qigong is more of like a rhythm thing. Qigong, and yeah, I was a karate jock. I was a fighter. I was not interested. So we're rooming down in Oakland, California. And at this point, I always switch to my viewpoint at the time because it makes the story better. And so he's got this professor guy with him, and this kind of short, stocky guy can't understand every 3 words that comes out of his mouth. And this guy is tagging along with us. I can't shake this guy. And he's always telling stories about there was this, there was that. And when they do the this, and I was down in New York, and it's pretty good. That's kind of, please, get me away from this guy. Well, anyway, the night before the tournament, I'm out partying, and so I go to bed, and I'm at 6 a.m. I'm hearing this. Well, he and Fred are up practicing. They're doing trapping hands. Brush, grab, strike, brush, grab, strike. I look at the clock and say, guys, it's 6 a.m. And I pull the covers over my head and they stop. Well, an hour later, I hear off in the distance, clack, 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 where they're doing a double canes drill called Sinawali out in the parking lot. I'm thinking, you've got to be kidding me. These guys are nuts. Okay. So anyway, we've got the eliminations of the tournament. I still can't shake this guy. I still can't shake this guy. This guy's following all over this professor guy, and I can't understand him, and he won't leave me alone. We get to the intermission, and we're at this point where it's like he's telling a story, and I'm looking for a rope and a rafter. I'm ready to hang myself. It's like, spare me this, because this is like going on way too long. And it was in the subway in New York, and they grabbed me, and he said three person. So he's telling me about how he's getting mugged in New York in the subway, and then he goes, "Bunny, you grabbed me," and I don't know of. At least spiritually, I rolled my eyes up in my head. Okay, now's the time to take me out and shoot me. So I grab his wrist, and then magic happened. He just did a very simple walk away. I'll see if I can do this for the camera. You raise your arm up here, then you walk under your arm, and it pries it out of your hand. But it wasn't what he did. It was how he did it. Remember, I've been fighting in the black belt division. This is 1980. I've been fighting for 10 years. I was in the top 20 for 3 or 4 years. I was in the top 10 for a couple of years. I have seen all kinds of confidence. I've seen Jeff Smith own a room just by walking in. I've seen Howard Jackson calmly, extremely certain of himself. I've seen blustery types try and fake their way into confidence. When Remy Presses did this, I got the feeling that it never occurred to him that it wouldn't work. This was so above any confidence level that I'd seen. And mind you, I've been trying to blow this guy off for a day and a half. And I spotted that. And one of my first thoughts is, whoa, I got to watch this guy. So several months later, he comes to Portland, and he's doing a 2-day seminar. And I took the 2-day seminar, and I was just off the high board again. Jump off the high board, don't hit water with karate. Jump off the high board with arnis, and don't hit water. And the thing that impressed me so much about him was how he did disarms, how he did takeaways on the stick. And it was like a hot knife through butter. There wasn't any yanking, wrenching, overpowering, so forth, is you had the stick. He captured the stick. You no longer had the stick,
Mm.
and you're, how in the hell did he do that? And it was the most perfect segue from being a karate jock over into being a martial artist. And the thing about him, which is just amazing, is as opposed to Professor Remy only being a stick guy, he was an empty hand guy as well. So the entirety of, there's a huge piece of the pie that I was missing in terms of martial arts. So we have joint locking, we have throwing, we have sensitivity, we have body maneuvering. I had the kick and punch down because, like I said, national champion, 3 years running, easy. I have kick and punch. I don't have to worry about that. But there's all this other stuff that I had read about because I studied many martial arts, and I've got to make a clarification here because there's an author, Japanese author. His name is Kenji Tokitsu, and he's in Paris now. He's written several very good martial arts books, and he was talking about karate kata, and he said, I have studied 50 variations, 50 different karate styles. And he goes, but let's make the distinction between studied and trained in. I said, he's only trained in like maybe 3 or 4 styles, but he had studied, which means he had studied the attributes and characteristics and the similarities and differences and the principles of 50 other styles. Well, I had studied a lot on martial arts. I'd studied a lot on internal Chinese martial arts. I studied on Indonesian martial arts, as well as Japanese, Korean, and Okinawan martial arts, and then as well as principles of judo and aikido and so forth. And so I had a concept of the rest of the piece of the pie, but I had not had the training. Well, with Professor Remy, I ended up having the training, and it shifted me from being a karate jock to a martial artist. And at that point in time, I remember talking to Steve, the late Steve Fisher, very good friend of mine, class individual. And I'm poo-pooing this. I'm just a karate jock. No, Dan, you're a martial artist. Nah, I'm a karate jock. No, you're a martial artist. Well, he knew about 5 years before I did that I was a martial artist. But
I'm curious with the stuff with Presses. Did it feel like an evolution of your training, or did it feel like it was a complete shift?
It was a left turn at Albuquerque,
okay,
which morphed into the evolution of my training. I was familiar. It's funny because there's been a lot of yip on the internet about, if you trained in another style, you didn't get pure modern artist and yada, yada, yada. And that's for a totally different interview with somebody else. But the thing is that luckily enough, back in the day, I was a bit of a chameleon. If Chuck Norris did a move, I worked on that move until I looked like Chuck Norris. If John Natividad did the low high round kick, I worked on it until I looked like John Natividad. So I was constantly redefining and reshaping what my body could do.
Okay.
Keith Vitale, and he'll back this up. He's said to me many times, Dan, you and I fought alike, except you used both sides. And I never looked at it that way. I mean, we had the same tools and so forth, but the thing is that I was very familiar with accommodating or using my body to accommodate whatever techniques, and for lack of a better word. So I gravitated to modern artists very, very quickly, but there was a lot of stuff that I had never done. I had never worked with weapons because most of the weapons I had been familiar with was like the 6-foot bow staff, which is like I'm going to carry a bow, or the sickles, or the nunchakus. I played with nunchakus until I did a Letterman stupid pet trick, conked myself in the head very hard. It's like, no, these are going away, man. I'm throwing these away. But when we got into the single stick, and then how the single stick could also morph into the empty hand. It was like, oh, this is fascinating. And then the final thing, body wise, which was just amazing, and I found out that it's pretty much this way in other Filipino martial arts, is that it was based on the flow. So instead of being ballistic, high speed, bam, 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 which is hard on the body, okay, now you're into a continuity of motion, continuity of action, continuity of movement that didn't have the type of thing to it, which is very body friendly. You know, you think about it on, let's say Tai Chi, after about 5 quad shots of espresso. That's the flow in arnis.
Okay.
And
It's a great metaphor. I
yeah,
get it.
and it was, and this became the evolution of Dan's art, because it has it's funny because there's again, like, going back to that, like, pure modern arnis, yeah, somebody's karate or taekwondo influenced their arnis. Well, with me, it's the reverse. It's the arnis has totally morphed my karate and morphed what I do, what I teach. And it was a wonderful gift and a wonderful test of patience for Professor Remy to put up with me being a knothead trying to shine him on, so that then I could finally I could reap the rewards of it. And so 1980, it's 2023, so that's 43 years now. Is my math right? Yeah, 43 years. Yeah.
What was your relationship with him like?
Oh, now, okay, hold on. How's that? Palm slap to the forehead. We were very friendly, but I kept him at a slight distance, because one of the things about my, I was known as Super Dan. I was known as the Rebel. I was the first guy to wear a T-shirt in karate competition ever. I was the first guy to have a nickname nationally. Before Superfoot, there was Super Dan. And there's a funny story to that, which I can get into. But the thing that wasn't known about me was that I had a strong senior junior ethic. Professor Remy was my senior. Danny, call me Remy. Yes, sir, Professor. No, Danny, you call me Remy. Yes, sir. Say, Professor. What about? So now, unlike Fred King, who also has a terrific senior junior ethic, but he had more of a personal relationship with Professor Remy. And if there was any, I don't believe in regrets, but if there's any, and substitute a better word for regret, but if there's any regrets that I had, it was that I never took the time to actually establish a personal relationship. And he wanted to, but I still had the senior junior thing going on. That being said, I helped organize seminars for him. There were several seminars where I was his right-hand man or I was his dummy, etc. And so we had high regard for each other, but I didn't let him in as close as perhaps I should have. So
okay, yeah, you regret that. It sounds like.
Anyway, we're back to funny stories. Super Dan. So back in 1973, I had won our organization's tournament, which was the Western States Karate Championships, and I'd won it for like the second or third time or some crazy thing like that. And one of our black belts, Paula Short, would write it up, send it to the magazines, because the magazines would print, so she wrote it up and sent it in, had pictures and so forth. And she has in there young Super Dan Anderson, as he is being known across the Northwest. And she'd done that as a prank, because I liked comics. I read comic books. I love comic books. And I'm reading this Super Dan Anderson. I'm kind of going, and I'm pissed off. I'm angry because and her her attitude on it was, haha, deal with it. So
I love it.
so so
So
so
good.
I was cranky about it until I was at a tournament, and there was a guy that came up and he goes, Super Dan, and he shook my hand, but it was out of like, wow, this is cool, and respect. And my first thought is, I've got a handle, like CB radio, breaker, Super Dan on the line. It's like, I've got a handle. And ever since then, I liked it. Now, here's an appendage to the funny story. When I quit competing, people call me Super Dan. And I said, "Sir, that guy's no longer around," because I didn't fight anymore, right? So anyway, about 4 years ago, I get tickets to the Grant Cardone 10X Summit, and it happens to be down in Vegas, so it's close. Cheap tickets, which means I'm way up in the nosebleed seats. But think of Super Bowl halftime for businessmen on steroids.
Mm-hmm.
That was the Grant Cardone thing. And now, at the same time, one of the buzzwords in the industry was, does what you're doing reflect your brand? And so, I'm huge on definitions. If you have a working or correct definition of something, okay, you can work with it. Nobody would define brand for me. It's not your brand name, it's not your logo, it's your brand. And it's kind of like, thanks, guys, this is getting me nowhere. Well, anyway, so I'm up in the cheap seats. There's this guy talking about watch what you post on Facebook, because it can reflect negatively on your brand. It's kind of like, yeah, my wife has told me that a lot. Watch what you post on Facebook, because you want to put a good image forth and so forth. But he goes, it might reflect negatively on your brand. And then he goes, so what is your brand? And honest to Pete, he goes, it's you and what you stand for. And I damn near jumped out of my seat and yelled, thank you. Because somebody had given me a working definition of brand. About a quarter of a second later, it hits me. Wait a minute. I've got a brand that I have been dissing for nearly 20 years. That was Super Dan. That's what people knew me as. That had a whole image to it. So I'm sitting there and I've got my phone. I'm texting Fred King. I'm at the Grant Cardone 10X conference. Super Dan is back! Exclamation point, exclamation point, exclamation point. I will explain when I get home. And he sends me this picture, like with a great big thumbs up or whatever. And ever since then, a lot of my posts, a lot of my stuff, it has to do with Super Dan, because that is what I was known as. That was my brand. And it all came out of being pranked. So, so when we get back to, and again, this goes back around to the senior junior thing, because I was Super Dan. One of the first things I did was I got me this 3/4 length blue shirt, ironed on a Superman symbol, and I fought in that. First person across the country that did that. I later on had a football jersey, Super Dan. And
did you get any pushback?
The traditionalists looked at me kind of like, the youngins, they loved it. But the thing is I could back it up in tournaments.
Yeah. Did you wear a belt? Still wear your belt?
Yes, I did. Yeah. And I'd wear like the regular black karate gi pants. And I'd wear the belt, or sometimes it'd be blue, because I wore whatever I wanted. I was Super Dan. If you don't like it, you just whip me in the ring. Right. And unfortunately, I was kind of Mr. Joe Cocky that way. I thought I was the white Muhammad Ali. I thought I was having a lot of fun. Everybody else thought I was cocky, so they either liked it or they didn't.
Sure.
But anyway, but yeah, and sometimes there were even tournaments that wouldn't allow you to wear a T-shirt. And of course, I had a gi jacket with me just in case. But eventually, I started winning my way over, and this is, and people that are listening, there's a lesson that I learned a little bit too late in the competitive field, but no matter how you feel what you're doing, be observant of the reactions around you. See, my blinders were like this and like this.
Mm.
So when I thought I was being the white Muhammad Ali, being cool, I figured everybody knew that. No, no. I started hearing stories about what an arrogant little whatever, cocky, etc. And it's kind of like, no, no, I'm having fun. I'm having fun in my head, but that's not what I'm projecting. And so I found out that it is much easier to earn a bad rep than it is to work it off. It took me about 5 years to work off this arrogant, cocky business.
Okay.
And
how did you do that? How did you combat
I
that?
just I just stopped acting like that and let the stories die out.
Okay.
It was just I didn't do any explaining to anybody because it's like anybody can explain or justify or whatever. But the thing is I started being friendlier. I started being friendlier towards traditionalists. I started acting more like a karate guy instead of like the white Muhammad Ali.
Mm.
And within that culture, it's kind of like, oh, Super Dan must have mellowed out. Good, this is what I want. And so now it has morphed into being, Super Dan's more of the elder statesman. I do that. I do that in modern arnist right now because I'm probably one of the very, very few that's been in modern arnist continuously since 1980.
Mm.
There's several others, but I'm.
It's a short list.
It's a short list. I'm a bit more prominent. So, my nickname amongst the group that I hang out with is Uncle Dan.
Mm.
In Filipino, Manong Dan. And it's kind of like the elder statesman thing. So it's kind of morphed into that. And but that's how I did it. And it's going back to the lessons that I learned from guys like Steve Muhammad or Chuck Norris or Howard Jackson, Jeff Smith, Bill Wallace, these guys. And so that's kind of what's happened there. But yeah, Arnis has been it's been a savings grace not only to my interest but to my body, because there's a lot of martial artists out there who have bad knees, bad hips, bad backs, bad necks, bad this, bad that, bad the next thing. And here's an example. I was 68 because it was a year and a half ago, where I rode my Spider. That's a 3-wheeled motorcycle, 2 on the front, 1 on the back. I rode it cross country to Connecticut. And the guy who's organizing the gig, Brian Zawolinsky, he's very spooked that I'm going to have like some sort of episode on the road. So I have to tag with him every evening just to let him know that I'm okay. But he would mention to people, says, God, he's been riding all the day on that thing. And all you ever see it is in the first 20 steps, it's like he's back to normal.
Mm.
I get off, I'm a little bit sore. It takes me about 10 steps to lubricate the joints, and then bam, I'm right back with it. Yeah. Bruce Chu, who's another arnist guy who's also done kung fu, he remarked to Mish Handworker, he said, yeah, he's almost 70. God, he's good. And so the thing is that the arnist has really kept the body to where it can function instead of being an old-timey karate guy that has the bad elbows, the bad joints, and walks slightly hunched over because I'm injured, et cetera, et cetera. Instead, I look a lot better than people generally estimate my age in about the late 50s or 60, 63, something like that.
I've seen you move. You certainly move better than just about any other martial artist at 70.
And that's the arnist. I mean, there's the karate that was the foundation, the background, but the flow on the arnist has helped me move my body in a very relaxed type of manner. And then you remember when I was telling you about there's a difference between study and training. Okay, well, I don't have it in front of me. There's this marvelous quote by an internal martial artist named Tim Cartmel. He teaches down, I think, in the San Francisco area. And people, when they look at internal martial arts, they look at like Tai Chi or Xingyi and Bagua. But the thing is they go heavy on the Qigong. The Qi is flowing, and you do the Qi power to emanate. Yap 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 yap.
I thought the name was familiar. Episode 354.
Oh, I've got to see that then, because Tim Cartmel is one of my heroes. We've never met.
Oh, fun.
Yeah, we've never met, but I've read a lot. But the thing is that Tim, he mentions about internal arts being more of leverage, timing, and precision to use your strongest alignments and positioning against their weakest. Mm-hmm. And so that concept of internal, along with the flow of our-ness, has impacted my personal martial arts heavily. This is why I can move the way I move. Certain things that I've studied in terms of internal martial arts. I don't do breathing exercises. I don't do qigong exercises. That sort of thing. I respond well to acupuncture and acupressure, so I do believe in the healing aspect of the energy. The martial aspect, I'm unconvinced. It's the Mike Tyson rule. Everybody has a plan until he hit him in the face. And but when he talks about leveraging and principles and alignments, etc., this is something that, it's funny because I've never said this to anybody before, but I'll say this now, is that it's the closest thing to doing, let's say, an internal form of our-ness, because
sure.
One of the things that, and I'll segue into, because I mentioned about being a geek, a technical geek, I'll segue into that. One of the things that I firmly believe is that anybody can become as skilled as any old master. The old masters did not spring from the head of Zeus fully armed, like in Greek mythology, like the goddess of war, Minerva or Athena. They were the same stupid white belt that everybody is. They got hit in the face because their hands were down. They got kicked in the groin because they didn't cover. They got conked in the head with the stick because the stick hand was down or the check hand was down, or. And then they continued to train. They morphed. They evolved. They became unspeakably awesome. Some knew how to explain it. Some didn't. Professor Wally J. Small circle jiu-jitsu. He knew how to explain small circle. Professor Remy, he was more of a natural fighter. He didn't know how to explain anything in terms of the way that an inquiring Western mind would. That's where his boy comes in. This is where the martial arts geek comes in, because my 100% belief is that anybody can be as skilled as the greatest master, or anybody can be as skilled as I am. The only thing is you have to understand it the way that I do. So that lays the burden of explanation on me. So how can I communicate this so that you can get this in one lesson? The practice and the training of it, as you and I know, that takes time. That takes time to become skilled at it. But the thing is you learning it via osmosis or intuition or whatever, that's unsatisfactory to me. That is unsatisfactory. I don't do that. I don't believe that. That I did the research so that I could figure out, that's the geek in me. I adore research. I love research. I love digging in. But the average Joe student, it's like, here's one. Here's a freebie for you. You should really buy the book, but here's a freebie for you. Kata. How can kata training positively affect your free fighting ability? Now everybody and their mother's talking about the bunkai and the self-defense applications and breakdowns of kata, but I'm talking free fighting.
Mm-hmm.
Now, on the surface, you can't get two more different animals. Free fighting, it's fluid, it's intuitive, it's fast, it's this and that. Kata, it's very set. You can't do the other moves. It's like these two are two different animals, and they don't mix. Well, actually, and I did this as a research project, and it was like, okay, if it's not the surface moves of the kata, what else is there? So what does kata develop? Well, it develops certain attributes.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, attributes, eh? Let's see where these attributes can trade over. So let's, so what's your background? Very Japanese, Korean?
Yeah. Think of me as a Okinawan karate.
Okinawan. Okay, good. So Okinawan karate, your back is straight. You don't lean.
Mm-hmm.
If you do your punch and you lean forward, sensei gets crabby.
That's
He
right.
straightens your back up. Okay, structure. So now, how many times do you see in a tournament competition where the guy is throwing the punch and his body is way forward and so forth?
Mm-hmm.
Okay,
Often.
horrible structure. So here is a drill. I have somebody go, okay, give me the first two moves with peanut knee done. Okay, so I go, they do the down block and then they do the straight punch. Okay, do it again. Good, doing it. All right. Now your back is straight. What would sensei do if your back was, you get crabby? Okay. So let's do this. Let's have you guys do just some sparring drills, but you have to focus on keeping that back straight. You can't bend it one bit. Oh, okay. So ding, 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 and they're in there, and their back's all nice and straight. So, okay, good. There's structure. All right. Now, here's another attribute. You do your first move. Okay, do the second move. Peanut shoulder. Start from the down block. Okay, step in and punch. Okay, good. So what did you do? Well, I stepped in and punched. Okay, let me ask you this question. Did you arrive? Huh? Well, did you arrive? I don't understand. Well, what's the purpose of that step in and punch? Well, you're going to hit the guy. So, okay. Did you arrive?
Mm.
I don't know. So, okay, well, what's the intent to hit somebody? Okay, well, do that same move and intend to hit. Okay, then they like that. Says, okay, good. So in your mind, did you hit the guy? Yeah. Did you arrive? Yeah. Okay, good. Well, let's do this. How many times have you thrown the punch in the air and you missed the guy because you didn't get close enough? Oh, good. So then here's the drill. They're about 20 feet apart and they have to do a continuous shuffle until they arrive and they tag the person. That's kata. So it's how you take the attributes of the kata. So if you take the attributes of the kata and you apply them to free fighting, okay, there's one application. Let's flip the pancake. Now, how do you take the attributes of free fighting and put it into your kata? I did this example one day with my group, and it was amazing. I said, okay, guys, I usually let you guys free spar. I don't let you free fight. You know, free fighting is win and lose. Okay, I'm gonna let you guys free fight. I want you to win any way that you can. I want you, then your purpose is to win. Have you guys got it? Okay, good. Start. I let them go, and these guys are being roughnecking thugs for like 30 seconds. They're in there pounding each other. I go, stop. Good. Don't take off your pads. Execute. Nahanshi Shodan with that same intent. Now. All timing, all pacing, all clear-cut, wonderful technique went totally out the window, and that kata came alive. They were beating and pounding someone doing that kata. Okay, they breathed life into the kata, so they took an attribute from free fighting, infused it into the kata, and this was all a research project. It's kind of like, okay, good. So our kata is valuable. Yeah. Can you learn bunkai from them? Yes. If you think of it in the way that I do, it's very simple. Can they infect positively each other? Yes. And so when we talk about geeking, okay, that's my job. My job is to make it easier for you, and this is in all facets of the martial arts. So whether it's street, whether it's throwing, whether it's locking, whether it's stick work, whether it's double stick work, whether it's karate competition, whether it's free fighting, you know, that's my give back. That is my give back.
Was this the mindset when you started writing books? Because I want to make sure we've got a little bit of time. I want to make sure we talk about your books because you've written more than a couple.
I just finished book number 37.
Right.
Yeah, it's interesting because see, when I wrote the very first book, which is my flagship book, American Freestyle Karate, A Guide to Sparring, I actually started that out in 1974. And the reason was what you had on the market. You had books on basics, you had books on self-defense, and they were real basic type of things. You had historical books. You had nothing on free fighting. And so nobody had written something that I wanted to read. So I wrote it myself. I wrote the book I wanted to read. And I started in 74. I was this close to getting it published by Tuttle Publishing. And Tuttle, they were the peak in martial arts books at the time. Well, I went cheap on the photography, didn't want to spend the money, and they rejected it because of the photography. Really smart. So we fast forward to 1979. I'm in a tournament in LA, somewhere like that, LA, San Francisco, or whatever. And I'm talking to Paul Maslach, who's the editor of Inside Kung Fu, and I tell him about my story about the sparring book. And he looks at me, he goes, Dan, if you write it, I'll publish it. I said, are you sure? He says, yes, you write it and I will publish it. Boom, handshake. I spent the next nine months handwriting and then taking the handwritten notes over to the steno pool where I worked, where Kathy typed it out. After 3 rough drafts, we had the finished manual. Then I sat out very meticulously. I had a notepad on this technique, this move, then I'd have a number after it. And it would be, okay, this is going to take 5 pictures. Because one of the things I had hated was that you were here and then you were here.
Right.
How did you get
fill
there?
in the parts in the middle. And
where's the middle stuff? How do we get there?
Magic happened.
Yeah, exactly. So
you were done.
That's how I set up the book. And when we went down there, when we shot the photos, we did over 1,200 photos. The photographer, Ed Ikuda, said I was the most organized guy he had ever met. I figured I had one shot. That was it. And so I laid everything out in the book. It became the Bible of karate free fighting. It was actually required texts in a lot of different schools. And so that's where it started. Now we get into the year 2000, and I'm a very, very technically minded guy, and Professor Remy has 3 books, and for me, and I really have to say this so that everybody can get cranky at me later on, for me, they were useless. They were useless. They were your typical 1970s style book, and I was like, yeah, right. Explains nothing. So I had 2 books written, but I wouldn't do anything with because, again, senior, junior, I am not going to interrupt or cross his income stream. Now, he passed away in 2001. Boom, door opens. At the same time, I find out about how to do online printing from Mish Handworker, a good friend of mine, and the ball starts rolling. Now, so to answer your question, when I first started, it was to get a book out there, what I wanted to read. As it kept on going, I started looking at, okay, where are there holes in the martial arts book trade? Oh, here's a hole. Good. I'm gonna fill that hole. Here's a hole in RS. I'm gonna fill that hole. Filling until I've got as many holes as filled as possible. And again, it's all about, I'll be the first one to say, yes, I want to turn a profit. I want to make money off of what I've done.
Of course.
But the number one thing is again, when I look at myself, okay, I was a kid of 14 who came from a town of 24,000 who did not have a karate dojo. What did I have? Oh, I had desire. I had desire. I had a burn inside me. So a lot of stuff I had to learn, pay attention, figure out how to describe. And now, after having, I've been teaching since 1969. So I've been teaching for 54 years now. You don't have that many nuts in martial arts. I mean, I was a nut. I learned social graces very, very late. I learned a lot of things very, very late because I was such a nut. Well, after having taught for 54 years, there aren't that many nuts in martial arts. People will leave martial arts because they're confused. Why? Because teachers can't explain stuff. Why can't the teachers explain stuff? Well, they weren't nuts either. They didn't geek out on how to really describe how to do this. Well, so for me, my books and my videos, they are a way of making your life easier. That's how I look at it. If I can make your life easier, boom, I've done it. And aside from just absolutely enjoying the research aspect of it, I adore the research aspect of it. But when we talk about, I've produced, I don't know, maybe, 50, 60 DVD titles. Like I said, I've just finished book number 37. And if they have a continuing thread that runs through them, is that you are going to be able to honestly learn from this. You're still going to have to put in the sweat equity. It's not going to be magic, but it's going to be explained in such a way that you're going to be able to understand and duplicate. And that happened in my first book. I had people going, "Oh, wow, you're not talking above our heads. You're not using these highfalutin terms. It's almost like you're in the room talking to me." Yes, because that's what I wanted. That's how I wanted it to come across. I'm, aside from being, Joe Geek, I'm the same as everybody else. I need explanation on computer stuff so I know how to run it. Good. Please speak to me like I'm a 1970s high school graduate, because that's what I am. That's what I am. So I will speak to others as though they're high school graduates, not talking down, but talking straight across. Yeah. And I've got a personal motto on my own purchases. If I learn one thing from any book that I get, the book paid for itself. It paid for itself just like that. So long
Where
answer
can
to your
people
question, but
find those books?
Okay, I mentioned earlier that my nickname is Super Dan. So I call it the Super Dan Online Library. If you Google up Super Dan Online Library, it'll take you to my website, and I've even got the website easy enough so that my mother-in-law, when she passed away, was 94. She could navigate it. So, it's
a good
like
test.
it's not the niftiest looking high tech website, but you can go down. Oh, hey, karate books and ebooks. Click, the whole page comes up, and then you've got this title, that title. Click, goes right straight to the book. Just a couple steps here and there. So yeah, the Super Dan Online Library, and I'm also revamping what I call the Super Dan Online Academy, which is going to have.
Was that what the DVDs were, and you bringing that material forward?
Well, there are cross references to both, but the DVDs are if I get hot on a project again that hasn't been thoroughly explained. I've got a book called the Super Dan Method of Free Fighting, where I look at free fighting totally different than everybody else does, because I'll describe my underpinnings, my pillars. So you have attack recognition, which is one, timing, positioning, alignment, perfect finish, meaning in your head, and then the difference between free sparring, which is all developmental and is all cooperative based, free sparring, and then it'll morph into free fighting, which is win-lose. But you have to know how to free spar before you can free fight.
Makes sense.
And most people collapse the two. So, okay, good, let's spar. And they're trying to win. No, you're not developing. You have to learn how to spar. And in your sparring, you will learn the moves. You'll learn how to mix it up, how to knock out the fear so that when you get into free fighting, you're not going to be afraid. You know, and then it all goes back to these pillars where, you know, I gave a seminar at American Elite Karate Academy in North Carolina, Jared Kiesling. And I said, okay, we're going to do advanced free fighting. Oh, advanced free fighting, yeah. Has nothing to do with jump spins and explosive takeoffs. No, it has to do with advanced perception, which means anybody of any age can do advanced free fighting because it's about advanced perception and everybody can perceive. You know, I'll give you just an incredibly short answer or a short example. Timing. Everybody knows timing, but if you ask 5 different people the definitions of timing, you're all going to get the same. You're going to get a different answer. And more often than not, you're going to get an unworkable answer. Well, you know, it's the inner space of time and relationship and distancing and da da da. No. How does that translate to a white belt? It doesn't. So, working definition of timing. It's a decision of when. When what? When anything. We all know timing. If you're going to the front door, when does your arm start to move up so that you can grasp the handle? You know, you don't reach too soon and your hand is up here looking like a dork until you get there. You don't get to the door and kind of stand there looking and go, oh yeah, I'm supposed to raise my hand. Right. It's a decision of when what, when anything. Well, it's precision. And what are the two errors in timing? Well, I just said too soon, too late. Now, what's the hidden error? Unprepared. You can get ready to take off, but if your knees aren't bent, your split second timing is ruined by now having to get prepared to launch or prepared to go back. It's the hidden error. And so if you're not prepped to go, your exact split second go moment is ruined. You know, it's like, okay, in the camera, I have one hand down. There's the opening. I just ruined it by picking up my hand. No, it should have been, there's the opening. I go. Right. Okay. It's stuff like that where timing all of a sudden is no longer amongst the intuitive, but it's in an actual definable term backed up by exact drills that you can take with you and you can run with now.
We got a couple more things we got to get through.
That's the before, yes, sir. Yeah, go ahead.
Before we can wrap because these are important things.
You said you'd let me talk, so
I did. That's on you. You're going.
Anyway, a couple other things. Yes.
First one. What's next for you? I mean, we've spent a lot of time talking about all these wonderful things that you've done, but you seem just as excited talking about the things that are recent as you do talking about the things at the very beginning. So I can't imagine you're not excited about the future.
Well, the immediate future is lunch. I'm getting really hungry here. The next thing, and I need to learn about it because one of the things I'll tell people is what I know extremely well. I know martial arts extremely well. I know how to do books. I know how to do videos. But what I don't know, I don't know. So, combination between marketing, so that I can get more of these into more people's hands, and then self-marketing as to the seminar. I adore doing seminars. I love teaching people.
They're a lot of fun.
Who who I don't know, who I didn't raise up as babies, so to speak. They have different skill sets, they have different orientation points. But the thing is that martial arts is, to me, there's no more mystery about martial arts. And it's not being said as I know everything there is to know about it, because there's a lot still left to learn, but there's no mystery. I can always figure out, I can observe, I can explain something, etc. So if I can pass this on to others, there you go. So at some point, not yet, but at some point, I'll phase out of the day-to-day teaching at the martial arts school, because I'm still the main dog on the floor. Who's teaching the 5 and 6-year-olds? Me.
You're still having fun doing it?
Some days are better than others.
Sure.
Some days are better than others, but do I have the same spark that I had in 1969? No. Do I hate it? No. It's just I'm, like you said, what next? I'm ready for the next phase.
Sure.
I'm ready for the next phase, and the next phase, I think, is a huge public outreach so that others can reap the benefits. Because going back to modern artists, okay, there's a lot of wondering about, okay, how are we going to keep the art alive? And we have one person here that says, oh, it's got to be in an organization, in schools, etc. And with me, I'm not a huge organizational school person, but I know how to write. I know how to video. So my contribution is going to be this. People still read books, whether it's ebooks, Kindle. People still watch videos, whether it's DVD, whether it's streaming, whether it's a download. Information is information. And so taking the materials that I have, getting them across a broader base, and then doing it in person. Kind of like a Superfoot thing, except I don't have the degree of contacts that Bill has.
Sure.
But for me, that's the next phase. And as long as the body will still move, it's like Guru Dan Inosanto. That son of a gun he's what, 82, 83, and he's still doing seminars. That's my longevity hero. I want to move like Guru Dan when I'm his age. So that's kind of the goal. So that's the first answer to that question.
All right. Well, if anybody's, and this is a good time to pose this. So if anybody wants to talk to you about a seminar, would they go to the website or should they email you? How would you want them to reach out?
They can reach me in any number of ways. The email address is basically my birth name, which is Danny. I'm not a Daniel or a Dan. I'm Danny, D-A-N-N-Y, Lee, L-E-E, Anderson, A-N-D-E-R-S-O-N. And this shows you how old I am, at hotmail.com. People are going, are you still using Hotmail? Yes, I'm still using Hotmail. But, Danny Lee Anderson at hotmail.com. My cell number, I pick up pretty much anything anybody calls me, 503-317-8779. They can reach me through the karate school website, which is craftily named Dan Anderson Karate.
So clever.
That's a tough one.
Yeah.
Or the Super Dan online library. Sure. I can be reached through all those different ways. And so if anybody wants to contact me about anything, I've had phone calls from people I don't know that go, sir, hi, you don't know me, but my name is blah, blah, blah. I have a question for you. Yeah, go ahead and shoot. And
you clearly enjoy this style of conversation about martial arts. I can't imagine.
Absolutely. Because the thing is, like, if we go back to, Chuck North or Steve Muhammad or John Natividad or Jeff Smith, those were the guys that aided me. The old line in martial arts, the first, as far as Dan rankings, the first 5 stripes are what you get out of martial arts. The next 5 are what you give back. Well, I'm huge into give back. I've got 10th Dan in 2 different arts, and so there's no reason why somebody else can't do this. But at the same time, if I sit back and I hoard any knowledge or any inspiration, then you better start peeling those stripes from the belt.
Mm.
So, yeah, so that I very much enjoy that kind of discourse. In fact, it's hard to get me to shut up when I'm having that kind of discourse. So that's
Uh,
answer to the first question.
you you
Yes.
you you served me up for what is now going to make me look like a bit of a jerk of a segue. So now that we're about to end, what would your final words to the audience be today?
Okay. Number one, if you're a tournament player, do not fall into the trap of using that as a litmus test to how skilled you are. You know, tournament karate is like playing poker. What kind of cards do you get? If you get a pair of deuces, and that's the best hand you got, that's not how good a card player you are. You just got a crappy hand. Okay, you get into a tournament where either you don't play the game that well, or the judges, um, they don't see your points or whatever. Don't take that as a litmus test. The thing is that it's how the game was played that day. Uh, the second thing is that there's a lot of uh, talk about, why are you doing martial arts? And here's the thing, nobody ever thinks about it this way, but what is the bottom line common denominator amongst why people do martial arts, whatever kind of martial arts? And whenever I ask people this question, they never get it. The bottom line is because they wanna. Now, why they wanna? Okay, that's where you get into the thousands of reasons. But so when I talk to let's say junior instructors, the first number one rule is you can't blunt the wanna. You can't chip away at the wanna. Now, so if you want to do martial arts, whatever reason that you have is valid. The only non-valid reason that I would interject on people in my school is that if you want to use it to hurt somebody, okay, that's not a good reason. But the rest of it, you want to be a tournament player, rock on. You want to do it for physical exercise, rock on. You want to do it for a social thing, rock on. You want to do it as a pastime or a hobby, rock on. You want to be a geek like Uncle Dan, rock on. No matter what the reason is, any reason that you're doing martial arts is valid. So don't allow all this other stuff, including belt ranks, including style affiliations, including how you did in this contest or whatever. Don't let those be the litmus tests of why you like to do this. It's look at it as a comparative. Why do you go to this restaurant? I like their food. Case closed. And so there's that. Now, then the other thing is that remember about ups and downs. Okay, look at back at the first grade when you're learning how to do penmanship. You learn that capital A, and you got this line that goes up, and then you got this line that goes, whoops, that went way off to the side. Okay, you got this line that goes up at an angle, goes down, goes this crossbar that went upwards. Well, that's better, but okay, so we got this line that goes up, line goes down, and there's that crossbar that goes straight. Oh, that's a good looking A. You do the next one, and it sucked. It's all a learning process. So the thing is that one of the things that took me the hardest thing to learn that I adore now is that if I have a bad day at execution or training or whatever, I revel in it. I enjoy the heck out of it. Why? Well, next class can't be that bad. It can't get any worse than that. It can only get better. So instead of that class or that exhibition or that tournament or that seminar not going well and then really taking it personally, no. Let's enjoy it. Let's enjoy it. That really sucked. Dang, that was bad. can't get worse. Next time's going to get better. And then what you find is that you find on the overall whole, things aren't going that bad. I am enjoying this. So for whatever reason why you want to enjoy it, enjoy it. If you have a day that sucks, cool. Mark that on the calendar. April 28th, this was a 10-star bad day. Yeah, baby. And then don't use all this other stuff as a litmus test as to the validity of why you're doing it. Why are you doing it? Bottom line, because you wanna. Rock on, because you wanna. That's why we all do it. Why we wanna? Lots of different reasons. And then, the last thing is go to my website and buy my stuff. I had to have a cheap plug in there. I had to have a cheap plug in there. But, you know, I'll segue from there into one last thing is, and that's find your inspiration from anywhere, whether it's from you, whether it's from somebody else. I had terrific inspiration from the golden age and then into the silver age of karate competition, but I had inspiration from Professor Remy. I had inspiration from my wife. I had inspiration from my friends. Grab your inspiration from anywhere. And in the long run, be your own hero. Be your own hero because you're the one putting in the sweat equity of it. Pat yourself on the back for what you did good. Take what was hard and just acknowledge. Don't take it personally. Just acknowledge. Okay, yeah, that was kind of hard. And then you continue to persevere. You know, as long as you look at it, if you look at it any way that you can twist something into a positive, do that. And that has worked extremely well for me. I didn't learn that lesson early on, but it worked extremely well for me. And so it works for me. It can work for anybody. If I can do it, anybody can do it.
What did you think? Not quite a marathon episode, but a longer one for sure. And, well, it's because there are a lot of great stories. I appreciate you coming on the show, Professor Dan. Thank you for sharing all that great stuff. The smiles, the laughs. I had a blast. And I know I'll talk to you again. I'll see you again, too. That's going to happen, I'm sure. Audience, thank you. Thanks for watching or listening. Thanks for being in the audience. Knowing that you're there means a lot to me when we're recording. It really does. And if you want to go deeper on this episode, please check out your show notes. They're in your phone if you listen there. But there's always more at whistlekickmartialartsradio.com. Please go check it out and enjoy. I hope you do. If you want to help us out, Patreon, the family page, share episodes, leave reviews. But here are two other things. Bring me out for a seminar. Let's have some fun. I'll work with your students and you will have a blast. If you want your school to be more, better, bigger, more profitable, whatever your goals are, let's have a no obligation conversation about how we can do that. We're working with a number of martial arts schools right now, and I'm watching the numbers, whether we're talking revenue or profit or student count, they're all going in the right direction. And it's a direct result of the work that we do. We have a unique methodology that other consulting firms do not use. It's a lot more holistic. It is not cookie cutter. And it's also likely more affordable than others. I'll let you draw your own conclusions from there. If you have feedback for me about those things or something else, you can reach out, jeremy@whistlekick.com. If you want to see more of what we're doing, if you want to stay in touch, you can jump on the newsletter list at whistlekick.com. There will be a pop-up there. You could also follow us on social media at whistlekick everywhere you could think of. Until next time, train hard, smile, and have a great day.